Welcome to the Principles of Success. My name is Nathan, and this is Season 1, Episode 22. And it's kind of interesting how there's so much more I had to talk about on discipline than there was on enduring and tenacity, because the episodes for discipline are all about 20 minutes long, and so far the episodes for endurance is about 10 minutes long. So let's see how long this one goes. But today we are talking about taking the calculated risk. We already talked about taking risks in action, but this is a endurance one as well. You have to be able to adapt. If you don't adapt, you will die, and you will not be able to endure and maintain. If something's not working, you have to change your strategies. You have to make sure that as you pursue your goals, that you don't get set into doing it one way, because if something changes, then you might be screwed. So you have to be resourceful as well. I'm kind of tangent, but I'm kind of wondering if it's less, if the episodes are shorter because I'm more tired now, or if it's just that I have less to talk about. But you have to be resourceful. I already mentioned that I'm recording this with 2 buckets and a little plastic thing to hold my camera in place. You have to be resourceful. If you don't have the resources, you have to find the resources. Too many people are like, I don't have what I need, I guess I'll just quit. Or you can go, I don't have what I need. What do I need to do to get what I need? And that's where being resourceful comes into play. Because if you're not resourceful, then you're going to struggle. Even when you have resources, if you waste your resources, you're going to struggle. But if you don't have the resources that you can afford to waste, if you're not resourceful, then you're going to deal with problems that you wanted to have dealt with beforehand, or you deal with problems that you could have dealt with easier if you had been resourceful. And what are some examples of resourcefulness? Well, for example, whatever. I have a ton of yogurt containers because they eat a lot of yogurt. I use them as Tupperware because that's how I grew up. I grew up extremely poor, so our Tupperware was yogurt containers, which are the same as were cottage cheese containers, which are the same as the yogurt containers. But we ate a lot of cottage cheese growing up. I eat a lot of yogurt now. So those little containers that you get yogurt, your sour cream, your cottage cheese, all of those containers make fantastic Tupperware. However, they are a little ghetto. My roommate, who grew up poorer than I did, and he finds it annoying that I use those, because he's like, why don't you just buy Tupperware? They're like $2. You have the money for it. And I'm like, yeah, but I have this right here, and it does its job great. But I'm not saying either one is right or wrong. It's just how we were raised differently. But one is being resourceful, one is not. So that's an example of resourcefulness. You got to figure out how to make do with what you have, and also have to figure out how to get the resources that you need. That's part of being resourceful, is finding what you need. Making sure that what you think you need is what you actually need. For example, most people would think that I need a nice camera stand to be able to record quality video. This works great. I haven't had any problems with it so far. I could use a better camera, but that has nothing to do with my camera stand. And I still might buy a camera stand, because it is kind of annoying, and it is nice to just be able to clip your camera right into the stand. And I have the money for it, I just haven't done it. So being resourceful is important, even when you have the resources, because if you are wasteful with your resources on stuff like a fancy camera stand, then you might not have the resources you need to invest in some real estate that I'm working on. So you need to make sure that you have the resources and that you are a good custodian of those resources. And you need to be able to adapt. I already touched on it a little bit, but a fun story about adapting was from my mission. I had a bike that had the nasty habit of the front wheel popping off on me. The first time that happened, I got pretty beat up because all of a sudden I went from having 2 wheels to not having a front wheel. And I was not expecting it, and I got hurt pretty bad. However, I slowly adapted to that. I eventually got a nicer bike, but I slowly adapted to that, and at one point, I'd gotten so used to this bike being so terrible that we were crossing across a busy street with oncoming cars coming, and the wheel popped off on me, and without missing a beat, I hopped off the bike, scooped the wheel up, ran the bike without losing any momentum. And that's adaptation. When things are not going perfectly, you have to change your approach. You have to be willing to try things differently. Because if one way doesn't work, another way might. If you're dealing with a problem, whether it's health, financial, emotional, whatever, you have to find workarounds. And those workarounds can either be fixing it, finding ways around it, or finding ways to just be okay with it. And those are all okay approaches. It depends on the circumstances. So make sure that as you go throughout your life that you're able to adapt and change. Because if you're too stiff, you can't do what you need. And I've talked about, I'm studying herbs a lot. There's a lot of herbs that help you that are called adaptogens. And they help your body regulate and they help your mind regulate. So for example, reishi mushrooms help regulate your inflammation. If you have high inflammation, they help reduce it. If you have low inflammation, they help raise it. I think it's inflammation. Don't quote me on that one. I'm just going off at the top of my head, so don't quote me on that one. I do know that reishi mushrooms are adaptogens. I just don't remember what they help adapt. Anyway, so you have to be adaptive and you have to be able to adjust as life throws all those curveballs at you. And you have to be able to problem solve. If you let the problems stack up and you don't figure out ways to fix them, overcome them, deal with them, maneuver around them, then eventually those problems will stack up to the point where it's just too hard to keep moving forward and you'll give up. So be tenacious, keep working hard, which we will talk about next month, and I will see you all next week where we will finish up enduring, and feel free to contact me. I've talked about it in the last 2 episodes. Look those up. Watch the motivational episodes and watch the book review episodes. As of right now, I'm doing financial books. And I'm not entirely sure what I'm going to do next. So if you have suggestions on categories of books, because I've read over 1,000 books at this point. I don't necessarily need book suggestions, but I will accept them. Just give me categories of topics that you would like me to review books on, because I've probably already read over 12 books on that category. Anyway, I will see you all next week.